Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, today we've seen that the market didn't do as well. Of course, they're out there blaming this on the Brexit. This is why the stock market is falling. We see right now that gold and silver, they have moved up a little bit. And we're starting to realize that as we move forward, we really need to watch the precious metals market, because when things start to rapidly fall apart, we're going to see gold and silver explode. And we're going to see gains of $50, $60, $100, $150. And when we start seeing that, this is when everyone should say, okay, here it comes. We're heading down that path. We're about to go here. And at the same time, we will be seeing the stock market collapse at the same exact time. But what we've been looking at, and everything that we've been researching, we've been watching this economy implode on itself every single day. And it is not getting better at all. It's actually getting worse as we continually move on here. Now, we know a lot of people went back to school. We know they took out student loans. And we know a lot of the graduates, they cannot find a job, which means that they're going to be delinquent on their loans. And this is exactly what we're seeing. Coming from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, they already estimated that 90-plus day delinquent loans to be over 11%. This puts student loans at the higher delinquency rate than credit cards, which is 7.6%. Auto loans, which are at 3.5%. Mortgages, which is at 2.2%. So what we're seeing here is that everything we've been talking about, where graduates cannot find the high-paying jobs, they cannot make ends meet, they're living with their parents, this is all true. Actually, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that 49% of college graduates aged 22 to 27, they were working in careers right now where they didn't even need college education, which shows us that these people are not working in the field they went to school for. They're not finding those high-paying jobs that everyone promised them. And I know a lot of people out there that are graduating and they cannot find work. Now, is this happening to every single person? But no, we're seeing it happen to the majority of the people. And it is getting worse and worse. What else are we seeing? Well, we have many other indicators here. Retail sales in luxury items coming from Bank of America credit and debit card spending data. Guess what? It is declining. Home improvement related spending, well, that is declining too. So when you look at this, this is very easy to calculate. GDP is based on all of this. And without a strong rebound in spending, there can't be a strong rebound in GDP. It's completely impossible. And we are seeing that sales at luxury retailers, it has dropped from 2011 from 35% all the way down to around 2 to 3% here. We see home improvement, where we've had the height back in 2011 around 11, 12%. It is now down to 6, 7%. Building materials actually are at negative 5%. But we're having a housing boom. It makes no sense. And the reason why it makes no sense is because this whole thing is a complete illusion. The Baltic Dry Index, it has fallen by 1 point to 609. Now, something very interesting here is that we definitely have a pension bubble problem. And we see a lot of people worrying about the stock market, worrying about real estate, but we're already seeing a bubble in pension plans. Pension funds, which have been issuing over optimistic revenue forecasts for many years, aren't going to earn nearly enough money to pay the benefits that these recipients expect. Bonds, which form a major part of the most plans, well, they're earning next to nothing in interest. We're going to see defaults on pension obligations. Actually, it's already started to happen. We know that the U.S. Central State Pension Fund, whose 400,000 beneficiaries were recently offered cuts of up to 60% in the amounts they're going to receive. That is a warning sign. And when we move forward here, we look at the whole entire situation, and we see that companies in 37 states, well, guess what? They don't have the funds to pay out. This entire system is going to collapse, and we see multiple bubbles in different areas. We see it in the pension area. We see it in the stocks. We see it in the bond market. We see it in the derivative market. And when we look at all of this, and we look at what the central bankers have done, they've created a system that cannot be sustained, which does not benefit the people, which cannot work in the long run. The only ones that it benefits is themselves. Now, back in 2007, 2008, the U.S. economy entered a recession, which we all know, we all remember. And, of course, 99% of the economists, they didn't even see it coming. They told us the economy was strong, it's solid, it's contained, nothing to worry about. The stock market is soaring. What is everyone complaining about? And then all of a sudden, everything fell apart. And all of a sudden, these 99% of these economists just kind of scurried off into their holes and didn't say anything for quite a while. But there's a really good indicator to understand what the U.S., the economy is doing. We talked about the personal tax receipts showing how people aren't working today, how that has declined rapidly. To show that people really aren't spending, all you have to do is look at the state sales tax receipts. And guess what? They are declining. Now, with these two things, with people not having work, people not spending, this is a collapse scenario waiting to happen. This is what we saw prior to 2007 going into 2008. And when we look at this once again, and we say, okay, the U.S. federal personal withholding tax receipts, back in 2013, we hit a height of about 15%. It's dropped to 1% now. When we look at the state sales tax, well, what happened there? We were at 8% back in 2013. We have dropped down to about 1% right now. And this shows us, actually it's a warning sign, that we are in big trouble. Looking at commercial and industrial loans, well, guess what? The delinquencies, they are skyrocketing. This means that businesses are now late making loan payments. Now, they only do this when they don't have the cash handy to pay the bank. And this only occurs during recessions. And when we look at this once again, we see back in 2008 going into 2009, it's skyrocketed. And what we're seeing right now is the same thing. Since 2015, delinquency rate has skyrocketed. Back in 2009, it hit about 145. We are at 100 right now. We are headed in the same direction. And just to let everyone know this, from the beginning of 2015, it started at negative 20. By the end of 2015, it hit 100. In 2016, we're already close to 120. So what we're seeing right now is everything rapidly falling apart very, very quickly. It's deteriorating. There's no two ways of looking at this. Now, what's very interesting about this, we see state sales tax receipts declining. We see personal tax receipts from the federal government declining, delinquencies skyrocketing. We see delinquencies in student loans. And then the Wall Street Journal, they need to explain away what's happening here. So they came out and said, retail sales and consumer spending isn't everything. We really don't need that to support the economy. Well, wait a minute. They told us we didn't need manufacturing. They told us that this is a service country now. It's all dependent on spending and retail sales. Now they're telling us we don't need that. What is left in this country? Nothing. Because what's happening now is it's getting harder and harder to explain away what's really happening. And that is the economy's collapsing. Things are rapidly falling apart. And they're running out of excuses of how to explain this. You can't. You get to a certain point where there's nothing left to say. I mean, yes, you can just say, yeah, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. And pretty soon you're left with nothing. And everything that you said didn't matter really does matter. We see the ECB right now. They started to purchase corporate bonds. They spent about 348 million euros right now to purchase these. They're trying to keep the system alive right now. They're trying everything, actually. But they're not going to be able to do this. We see more European banks, they are failing. The Belgian-based Optima Bank has been shut down by both the National Bank of Belgium as well as the ECB. Now, according to the national supervisor, the bank would have been unable to meet its commitments to its clients and was forced to cease all banking activity after fraudulent transactions were unveiled. Now, according to official filings, the National Bank of Belgium had already effectively taken control of the Optima Bank by appointing a special commissioner. This person was set up to approve all transactions. Now, this happened during the first half of May. But they really didn't report this. Are there other banks in the Eurozone which are under extremely strict supervision by the national regulators? If a central bank doesn't even announce when a special commissioner is being appointed, how can the public be sure its deposits are safe? What else is going on in the Eurozone behind closed doors that people don't know about? And you have to remember, the Eurozone, this is not an elected body. There's no transparency. They don't report to the people. They actually don't care about the people because they're a bunch of central bankers. Now, we know that the UK, they are getting ready to vote if they should exit the EU. Right now, online and telephone polls are showing that 53 are saying that we should absolutely leave the EU. Now, we hear all the scare tactics that are coming out of UK, especially with the central bankers, saying that if, they leave the EU, the whole entire economy is going to fail. There's going to be war. There's going to be terrorism. They're just throwing everything on top of it and continually on. And they're just continually doing this. But we all have to go back to the governments and the central banks, that they don't want to take the blame for what is about to happen. Now, if there is an overall vote of people saying they want to leave the EU, will the government abide by this? If they do, and the economies around the world start to collapse, they're going to blame it on the people. They're going to say, see what you did? You collapsed the entire system. Now, we know, because we've been following this had nothing to do with it. They would use it to place blame. Now, this would start the collapse throughout Europe. Now, the U.S. is going to say, okay, we're safe here. A lot of people are going to take their funds and start pouring it into the United States. But eventually what's going to happen is the collapse will occur in the United States, and this is when they'll try to kick some type of vent off to mask that collapse scenario. And we can see at this point that we are getting closer and closer to this economic collapse. Things are really starting to accelerate, and we all need to be ready. If you are purchasing your supplies at Costco, at a supermarket, if you're using lifereliance.com and you're purchasing your emergency food there and having it delivered right to your home, continually do this. Do not stop. Make sure you have batteries. Make sure you have toiletries. Make sure you have water on hand, a weapon to protect yourself. Because as we've seen in other countries, when people become desperate, they will do pretty much anything. Now, I'm not saying everyone is bad, but you have to remember, to feed their family, to get supplies. We saw what happens during a happy holiday season when people rush into a Walmart. Just think about when they don't have food. And this is why everyone needs to be ready. They need to be prepared, because we understand what's coming. And at this point, from many people telling us, time seems very, very short at this point. And we're starting to see a lot of things accelerate, where the central bankers realize that this economy, it's not going to last much, much longer. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.